Yo, and welcome to the fourth installment of Zero or Hero. I've done 3 of these other videos, obviously, because this is the 4th one. And today I'm going to be comparing 2 series based on 2 criteria, which one have the better theme of heroism and which one have the better heroes. And the 2 series that I am comparing today are Vinland Saga and Furu bruozahuudo, or FMAB. I'll probably just call it FMAB because I don't want to say that whole name again. But yeah, moving on. So basically I'm just going to divide them into 4 categories. The heroism and the heroes for each series respectively. And I'm going to be starting with the heroism in Vinland Saga. But Vinland Saga is a bit of a tricky case because it in fact takes place about, 1,000 years ago. I mean, like, at the point of where the anime is most of the time, it's in 1014 AD, so that's about 1006 years ago. So it gives you a different perspective about how heroes and heroism could be perceived, because that was largely the Viking time, and a lot of what was seen as heroism was just people going around pillaging villages and stuff, and also how much of an accomplishment they could make and like how many kills they could rack up during war. So basically just video games but in real life, and actually the government or whatever just supporting it because they want their nation to succeed. But Europeans will just think that this is okay and that this is just like completely fine, and actually just more than fine. This is what men should be doing. And if you reject this order, you're either a traitor or a coward. And cowards are not really accepted because you're supposed to be cool and manly, and you're supposed to be able to kill people at the drop of a hat, And if you don't want to do that, then you're not like that and you're not cool. Or I guess you could just grow up in a farmer family and just become a farmer, because that's also accepted, because you need someone to grow the crops, and you know how it be. If you don't have food, then you can't even be a Viking in the first place, because then you'll starve to death. And it kind of goes even beyond just being a coward or just like someone that's like a real warrior. It's also about just their god and like where they actually end up going when they die, because if they end up being accomplished warrior, then they can actually go to this place called Valhalla where the good warriors go, and then they can battle it out in the afterlife for all time, which would be very fun for everyone. But then in the world of Vinland Saga, you of course have a peculiar case like Thorfinn, who is good at fighting, but he only is after one thing, and that's Askeladd's head, and he will do anything to get that, even if it means killing other people. And this makes him an interesting example of what heroism could be, because as we saw beyond the anime, and this is kind of a spoiler for what goes beyond the anime, Thorfinn, after he no longer has that goal of defeating Askeladd, because Askeladd's obviously dead by the end of the anime, then he kind of loses all of his purpose, and it gives him a lot more time to think about just what he's been doing. And that's when his ideology kind of changes and becomes a lot more like Thor's in the way that he thinks and in the way that he acts. And this is separating himself from his old self, which was more barbaric in whatever form, and then it's kind of him growing out of that, both just in his regular maturity as him growing into a person, and him realizing what separates him from the rest, where he retains this moral thought of compassion, and he realized that this wasn't really what he wanted all along. And now moving on to the theme of heroism and arucemisto bruozahuudo. And basically in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, what happens there is that you have this alchemy thing which goes beyond the regular laws of physics, and because of this you have things where people can of course bring back the dead, or at least try to in some form. You have things like Shao Tucker, who created a homunculus out of his own daughter and dog, and even though it's totally effed up, then it still just shows how this world is created and just how this world operates. And you also have things like the homunculi, and what happens with them is that they cannot exist beyond their basic part of the seven deadly sins. So they're basically just tied to that one element of themselves. And we saw this with someone like Greed, where when he started to break away from not just the family, but in some aspects he started to break away from his original identity by not just being so greedy, but gaining like friends and allies in a different way. Then that's when he was eventually disposed of by the group, because he started to reject the natural order of the homunculi, and then was absorbed back into the abilities and powers of the homunculus group. And with proper use like alchemy and like bringing people back to life, it's not always clear if it's something good or bad, and it's generally something bad, because even when you bring someone back to life, at least in the original, then those were the people that ended up being the homunculi. So it just goes to show that even if you break something that's like a cardinal sin, then it will come back to bite you, and it just shows that these kinds of things are not good for anybody in the world, including the people that are trying to do the experiments or whatever. So these rules create it so that heroism is very kind of hard to achieve in a world like this, and then it's also different on a political scale, and then on a scale of just the regular characters involved, because on a political scale, you obviously had the nation that the Elric brothers hailed from, and then you had them fighting against Scar's nation and his people. So on a political scale, it was correct for all of the people of Amestris, I believe the country's name is, to fight against and try to basically defeat and destroy all their livelihoods. And for all the people that come back for the war that survived from Amestris, which is the country that our main characters are from, once they come back, they are able to be hailed as heroes, and then they're just seen that way in the general public, even though it's a war, and they're obviously doing things that they were not proud of. But on a personal scale, for someone like the Elric brothers, for Edward Elric specifically, then him being heroic, or him just being able to have some kind of sense of heroism, comes from him being able to save his brother, even if he has to go through a lot of things along the way. And now for heroes in Vinland Saga. So in Vinland Saga, obviously it's about Vikings and then just like random kingdoms just fighting, duking it out for whatever reason, for territory, whatever. And heroism is different depending on the group that you're in. So heroism in Viking culture would just be described as just how many kills you can rack up in whatever mission or whatever you're doing. And that's just part of the glory of eventually dying and becoming a great warrior of Valhalla. But for someone in one of these nations like England or whatever, if they're able to just defeat the enemies like someone like the Vikings or the Jomsvikings, then they're able to find their heroism and glory from that kind of battle once again, but it always has to come from battle. But then with characters like Thor's and Thorfinn, then it comes from not just something like battle specifically, or at least for someone like Thor's, maybe it did at the beginning of his journey, but now as we came to know him, then it changed the meaning for him, what heroism actually meant. And heroism for him eventually just ended up meaning being a family man and just escaping from the life of battle that he knew, and just going to somewhere peaceful where wars and this kind of pillaging or whatever just did not exist. And it's the same idea for Thorfinn, because he did not have much of a purpose besides trying to kill Askeladd. So once that purpose was taken away, obviously he was able to grow up and then become something else, where heroism meant just being able to find this dream that his father had once had of finding this place called Vinland and being able to cultivate it in somewhere where it could be peaceful and happy for all the people to prosper. In FMAB, there's obviously a lot of messed up ideas, but there are also a lot of people who could be considered heroic in anyone's minds, like Roy Mustang, for example, who was able to even sacrifice his own eyes to continue and then just try to make his nation a peaceful one. And he's still like a playful character. And there's obviously the Elric brothers, which did plenty of heroic feats throughout the story. You have someone like Izumi Curtis, who was their teacher, and she first and foremost clear about her students and just her life at home, even if she had to do some things along the way and some personal things like try to bring back her baby, even if it didn't end up working properly, as we soon came to find out. And so now I'm going to do a ranking for who I think are the best heroes and who I think represents the best theme of heroism within their stories, and not just within their stories, but just a combination of the two. So the ones I think are the best for heroism are Thorfinn and Edward Elric, and the ones I think are the best heroes are Roy Mustang, Canute from Vinland Saga, who I didn't get to talk about much, and our main character, Edward Elric. And that's pretty much it for the video. If you did like, please do like, comment, subscribe, all that other stuff, share it around. We need the channel to grow. We're at 10 subs right now, and we're gonna keep going till we're at 10K subs or 10 million K subs.